Machiavelli never wrote about relationships the way modern people write about relationships. He did not write about feelings. He did not write about communication strategies or love languages or how to have a difficult conversation. He wrote about human nature. He wrote about loyalty and what actually produces it, what actually destroys it, and how to read the signs of its deterioration before the collapse becomes visible to everyone. And the thing that makes his observations so devastating is that they apply to every form of loyalty: political loyalty, professional loyalty, personal loyalty, the loyalty of a partner. Because the mechanics of betrayal do not change based on the context in which they occur. A person who is about to betray you, in a court, in a boardroom, in a relationship, goes through the same internal process. They begin withdrawing before they physically leave. They begin rewriting history before they rewrite the present. They begin building an exit before they announce one. Machiavelli mapped that process, and once you understand the map, you stop being surprised. You start seeing what is actually happening before it finishes happening. That is what this is about. Part 1. Machiavelli's framework for reading loyalty. Before the signs, you need the framework, because without the framework, the signs are just a list. With the framework, they become a system of understanding that you can apply not just to this relationship, but to every relationship you will ever have. Machiavelli's core insight about loyalty is this: loyalty is not a feeling. It is a calculation that people make continuously, mostly without being conscious that they are making it. Every person in a relationship is constantly, subconsciously running an assessment of two things. What am I receiving in this relationship relative to what I am giving? And what are my options outside of this relationship relative to what I have inside it? As long as the inside is better than the outside, and the balance of giving and receiving feels acceptable, loyalty holds. Not because the person is noble or committed or deeply in love, though those things can influence the calculation, but because the math works in the relationship's favor. The moment the math begins to shift, the moment the outside starts looking more valuable than the inside, or the moment the balance of giving and receiving tips too far in one direction, the loyalty begins to deteriorate, not dramatically, not with an announcement, quietly, internally, in the private space where a person's real decisions are made before they are enacted. Machiavelli writes that a prince should watch not for the moment of betrayal, but for the conditions that make betrayal rational. Because by the time the betrayal happens, the decision has already been made. Everything visible is just the execution of a choice that was settled weeks or months earlier in silence. This is the framework. You are not looking for the act. You are looking for the shift in the calculation. You are reading the conditions, not waiting for the event. Now the signs. Part 2. She stops investing in the future of the relationship. Machiavelli observed that the first and most reliable indicator of a person preparing to leave any alliance is the cessation of long-term investment. When someone believes they are staying, they plant seeds. They make plans. They talk about what they want to build. They reference a future that includes you as a given rather than as a possibility. When someone has decided, at some level, they may not yet be fully conscious of, that they are leaving, they stop planting. Not dramatically, subtly. The future tense disappears from their language. The plans that used to be made together start being made in the singular, or not made at all. The trip you talked about taking next year is no longer referenced. The conversation about where you want to live, what you want to build, what you want your life to look like together, those conversations no longer get initiated. This is not the same as a person going through a difficult period. A person who is struggling within a relationship still references the future. They may be uncertain or unhappy, or working through something hard, but they are still oriented toward the future of the relationship. They are still investing. The person who has begun the internal process of departure stops making investments they do not expect to benefit from. Pay attention to the temporal orientation of her language and her behavior. Is she planning with you? Is she referencing your shared future as something she is actively building toward? Or has the future quietly disappeared from the conversation, replaced by an unspoken emphasis on the present that has a specific quality to it? The quality of someone who knows this present is temporary. Machiavelli would call this the withdrawal of political capital. Before a prince abandons an alliance, he stops investing resources in it. He stops building infrastructure in that territory. He stops making commitments that would be costly to walk away from. He keeps the alliance maintained at the surface level, but he no longer deepens it. When a woman is preparing to leave a relationship, consciously or not, she does the same thing. The depth of investment withdraws. The surface is maintained. The future disappears. Part 3. Her emotional availability becomes selective. Machiavelli writes about a specific behavior he observed in advisors and allies who were preparing to shift their loyalty. He called it the performance of presence, the maintenance of the outward forms of engagement while the inner substance of it had already relocated elsewhere. In a relationship, this looks like a very specific pattern that is easy to dismiss individually, but unmistakable as a pattern. She is physically present, but emotionally somewhere else. Not distracted in the ordinary way that everyone is sometimes distracted. There is a qualitative difference between someone who is preoccupied with something in their life and someone who has quietly relocated their emotional energy to a different person or a different possibility. The person who is preoccupied comes back. They resurface. They have moments of full presence that interrupt the distraction. The person who has relocated does not come back in the same way. Their full presence, the version of them that used to be available to you, that used to be engaged and interested and warm in the specific way that felt like it was directed at you, that version becomes increasingly rare and increasingly hard to access. What you get instead is a managed version, responsive enough to avoid a conversation, present enough to maintain the form of the relationship, but the specific quality of attention that characterized real connection, the looking at you rather than past you, the laughing with you rather than beside you, the telling you things because she wants you to know rather than because communication is expected. That quality becomes inconsistent in a way it never was before. She is available for the easy interactions. She is unavailable for depth. And if you reach for depth, if you try to have the kind of conversation that used to come naturally, that used to be the texture of your relationship, there is a deflection, not always hostile, often gentle. Sometimes she simply seems tired. Sometimes she redirects. Sometimes she engages briefly and then withdraws before the conversation has reached the place where conversations with her used to naturally go. Machiavelli would recognize this immediately. It is the behavior of someone maintaining a position they have already internally vacated, the outward form of loyalty without the inward substance of it. Part 4. She becomes intensely private about specific things. Machiavelli is unambiguous on the subject of information and loyalty. He writes that the person who begins keeping secrets from their ally has already made a decision about where that ally stands in their hierarchy of trust. Because secrecy is not neutral. Secrecy is a declaration of separation. It draws a line between what is shared and what is not. And that line is always drawn along the boundary of where loyalty actually ends. In a relationship, the specific pattern to watch for is not general privacy. Everyone is entitled to interior life, to friendships that exist independently, to thoughts they have not yet decided to share. That is not the pattern Machiavelli is pointing to. The pattern is the emergence of specific, selective secrecy in areas that were previously open. Her phone was never a source of tension before. Now there is a new quality to how she manages it. Screen angled away, notifications silenced in your presence. A slight physical adjustment when a message arrives that did not used to be there. Not necessarily guilt, but awareness. The awareness of someone who is managing information that has a separate life from the one you share. She used to tell you about her day in the organic way that people do when their lives are fully shared. Now there are gaps, not the ordinary gaps of a busy person, but narrative gaps. Stories that start and do not quite complete. References to time spent that are not elaborated on. Questions about her day that are answered at a level of generality that did not use to characterize how she spoke to you. She has a new relationship with someone, a friendship, a colleague, someone from the gym, someone from her past, that she has mentioned once and then stopped mentioning, despite the fact that the relationship clearly continues. Not every new person in someone's life is a threat, but the specific combination of a new connection and the deliberate removal of that connection from your shared information space is a pattern with a specific meaning. Machiavelli would say, watch what people protect, because what someone protects from you is a map of where their loyalty is not. They do not hide what they are fully invested in sharing with you. They hide what they have decided belongs to a different world than the one you occupy together. Part 5. The rewriting of your history. This is one of the most psychologically sophisticated signs Machiavelli would identify, and it is the one that most people miss because it happens so gradually that each individual instance seems minor. He writes about a specific behavior he observed in courtiers and allies preparing to justify a change of loyalty, the retroactive reconstruction of grievances. Before a person can betray someone they have genuine history with, they have to do internal psychological work that makes the betrayal feel justified. Because even the most pragmatic human beings need to believe that their actions are at some level defensible. That psychological work looks like this. The small frustrations that were previously processed and released begin to be stored instead. Things that were forgiven are unforgiven. Moments that were understood in the generous light of a person who loves you begin to be reinterpreted in the less generous light of a person building a case. In practice, you experience this as a subtle but persistent shift in how she references your shared past. Arguments or difficult moments that were resolved, that you both moved through and considered closed are referenced again. Not in the context of something new, but as if they are still open, still relevant, still part of an ongoing account. Your characteristics that she used to describe with affection begin to be described with frustration. The same quality. Your independence, your intensity, your humor, your ambition that she once named as something she loved about you begins to appear in her language as a problem. Not in one conversation, but across conversations, consistently, as if a reframe is happening beneath the surface of your daily life. She begins to describe your relationship in casual ways, in terms of what it has cost her rather than what it has given her. Again, not dramatically, in small framings, offhand references, the language of someone who is slowly building an internal narrative that makes leaving feel less like loss and more like relief. Machiavelli would call this the construction of the exit narrative. Before a prince abandons an ally, he ensures that the abandonment can be framed as justified, as a response to failures on the ally's part, rather than as an act of disloyalty on his own. The rewriting of history is not dishonesty for its own sake. It is the psychological infrastructure required to make a decision that is already forming feel morally navigable. When you notice the history of your relationship being quietly rewritten, you are not witnessing her grievances. You are witnessing her preparation. Part 6. Her relationship with herself changes dramatically. Machiavelli makes an observation that appears simple, but contains an entire theory of human motivation. He writes that the most reliable sign that a person is preparing to make a major change in their external life is a change in how they relate to themselves. Before people leave, they become. They invest in their own development, their own appearance, their own sense of self, not for the relationship, but for the person they are about to become outside of it. This sign requires careful interpretation because it can look like something entirely positive and often is. A woman who begins working on herself, going to the gym, dressing differently, developing new interests, building new friendships, investing in her career, may be doing all of those things in a way that enriches the relationship rather than signals its end. The distinction Machiavelli would draw is in the orientation of the change. When someone is developing themselves within the context of a relationship, when the growth is integrated, when she shares it with you, when the new version of herself is being built in a way that includes you as a witness and a participant, that is the growth of a person who is expanding while staying. When someone is developing themselves in preparation for a life outside the relationship, when the growth has a separateness to it, when the new interests are not shared, when the new friendships do not include you, when the physical investment in herself seems oriented outward toward an audience that is not you, that growth has a different quality. The specific emotional texture is this. She becomes more vibrant, more engaged, more alive, but the energy of that aliveness does not come toward you. It exists independently of you. You observe it from the outside rather than experience it from the inside. She is becoming someone, but she is not becoming someone with you. She is becoming someone who does not need the version of life she currently has. The growth is real. The investment is genuine, but its orientation is away. And Machiavelli would say, watch where the growth is aimed, because a person who is building a future with you builds toward you. A person who is building a future past you builds past you. Part 7. What Machiavelli would tell you to do with what you know. Here is where most advice fails you. It tells you what to look for and then tells you either to leave immediately or to confront dramatically. Machiavelli would consider both responses amateur. He writes that the worst thing a prince can do when he identifies a shifting alliance is to act on the information prematurely or emotionally. Because premature action based on incomplete information does not resolve the situation. It escalates it. An emotional action telegraphs your awareness, which closes off your ability to continue gathering information and removes your ability to choose the timing and terms of your response. What Machiavelli would tell you is this: the first thing you do with what you know is nothing visible. You continue as you were. You do not confront, do not withdraw dramatically, do not perform either ignorance or knowledge. You maintain your position while you continue to observe. This is not passivity. This is the discipline of a person who understands that information gathered in calmness is always more reliable than information gathered in reaction. The second thing you do is run the framework honestly on yourself, because Machiavelli would insist on this. Before you conclude that she is preparing to leave, you must ask whether your own calculation within the relationship has shifted, whether your own investment in the future has remained genuine, whether your own emotional availability has remained real, whether you have been the partner you believe yourself to have been, or whether the version of the relationship you are defending exists more clearly in your mind than in the shared reality you both inhabit. He writes that many princes who were betrayed by allies had in truth already betrayed those allies first. Through neglect, through taking their loyalty for granted, through allowing the conditions of loyalty to deteriorate while assuming the loyalty itself would hold. The signs you are reading in her may be the signs of a person responding to conditions that your own behavior created. This is not an instruction to accept betrayal or to blame yourself for another person's choices. It is Machiavelli's insistence on honest accounting. If the conditions of loyalty in your relationship have deteriorated, the question is not only what she is about to do. The question is whether the relationship can be rebuilt on terms that are genuinely better for both of you, or whether what you are observing is the honest expression of an incompatibility that was always present and is now simply becoming visible. The third thing you do is make a decision with clear eyes, not in anger, not in fear, not in the desperation of a person trying to prevent something that may already be inevitable. A decision about what you want, what you are willing to invest in, and what you are not willing to accept. And then you act on that decision from a position of self-possession rather than reaction. Machiavelli's ultimate counsel to any leader facing a shifting loyalty was always the same. The prince who acts from clarity and self-possession, even in the most painful circumstances, retains his dignity and his power. The prince who acts from fear and desperation hands both to whoever he is afraid of losing. Your dignity is never worth sacrificing for the attempt to prevent something that another person has already decided. And your clarity, your ability to see what is actually happening rather than what you wish were happening, is the most valuable thing you possess in any situation where human loyalty is in question. Part 8. The deeper Machiavellian truth. There is a final observation that Machiavelli would make, and it is the one that changes how you carry everything else in this conversation. He writes that the prince who spends his political life managing the loyalty of people who do not genuinely want to be loyal is the prince who has built on sand. The deepest security is not found in reading the signs of betrayal more accurately. It is found in building the conditions under which genuine loyalty is the natural outcome. He writes about this with specificity. The alliance that holds is the alliance where both parties' genuine interests are aligned, where staying is not only more beneficial than leaving, but where staying is the expression of something that the person actually wants, not just the calculation they have made. In a relationship, this means something that is both simple and demanding. The most reliable protection against betrayal is not vigilance. It is the ongoing, genuine investment in being the kind of partner whose presence in someone's life is something they actively choose, rather than something they are maintaining out of habit, fear, or the friction of leaving. That investment is not about performance. It is not about being perfect or endlessly accommodating or suppressing yourself into whatever shape you think she needs you to be. Machiavelli would find all of that contemptible. He believed that a prince who governed through the constant performance of qualities he did not genuinely possess was the most fragile kind of prince, because the performance required constant management, and the moment it slipped, everything it had built came down with it. The genuine investment is about presence, real attention, the ongoing decision to actually know the person you are with, not the person you fell in love with years ago, but the person she is becoming right now in this season of her life. The willingness to grow alongside someone rather than to expect that the connection established at the beginning will sustain itself without continued cultivation. And beneath all of that, the fundamental Machiavellian foundation. Know your own value, not arrogantly, clearly. The person who knows their own value does not spend their life auditing the loyalty of everyone around them, because they understand that they are not entitled to any particular person's loyalty, and that the loyalty worth having is always freely given by someone who genuinely chooses to give it. If she is showing the signs described in this script, you deserve to see them clearly. You deserve to make a decision from that clarity, and you deserve to do it as a person who understands that losing someone who was preparing to leave is not a failure. It is information. Information about her, about the relationship, and about what you actually want to build next. Machiavelli spent years in exile after being abandoned by people he had served loyally and well. He did not spend those years trying to win them back. He spent them writing the most accurate analysis of human nature ever committed to paper. The betrayal made him useful to the entire future. Yours can do the same.